lies, shenanigans.
All right. The way Hot Topics works, one of our hosts will start us out and they'll tell us about their topic, tell us if it's the truth, a lie, or shenanigans, and exactly what went down. And then we'll talk about it with our panel until time is up and our friend Genji shows up. He'll drop in and let us know that time is up. Then we'll stop. We'll go to our live audience questions and comments online, and we'll talk about it for just a little bit more. So make sure you're online talking to us. Once we're done, we'll move on to our next host. All right, Rob B. I'm going to start with you. Is this a
Uh,
truth, lie, or is this shenanigans?
this is a truth. It's a very sad reality that some people are facing during this COVID pandemic. Now that we've been in it, and well, we're almost a year in. Some people have been in lockdown since January. So this, unfortunately, is just a reflection of how important our mental health is. If you wouldn't mind pulling up the picture, Neil.
Yep.
Pull it up, Neil.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an image of Nancy Russell, a 90-year-old Canadian who was living in an elderly care facility. She wasn't sick with anything, but COVID-19 took her life because rather than live another month isolated by another pandemic lockdown, she chose medically assisted suicide. So pre-COVID, the facility that she was at featured communal dining. They had a very rich schedule of activities. Miss Russell was able to do her own shopping. She remained very active. She was a very social person. Then, after the COVID 19 measures were put into place, residents were eating meals in their rooms. A lot of the activities and social gatherings were being canceled because of regulations. Family visits were curtailed or eliminated. Sometimes they would meet behind um, just plastic tarps.
Wow.
So it really limited the ability for her to interact with her family. Um, and her daughter was just so sad. Just some of the quotes that she had during the interviews that being mobile was everything to my mom. She almost overnight went from a very active lifestyle to a very limited lifestyle, and they had very early on a complete 2 week confinement to just her room. And when she wanted to be more active, the recommendation was, well, stand up and sit down in your room, stretch. So for someone who goes out and does her own shopping, has some level of independence, I can appreciate where it it just became too painful to go on that way. And I think it's a very sad reality of what's going on. Now it's important to note medically assisted suicide is legal and available in Canada. So everything was done on the up and up, and she did pass with her family around her. So she went out on her own terms. And I really just I wanted to bring this to light because we've discussed mental health and the importance of it so much, and now this is just an ongoing thing for a specific demographic. We're seeing an influx of these numbers in the aged population, and I just really want to get a reaction from the panelists as far as do you know any elderly people in your life? Do you have any elderly people in your life who are facing similar struggles?
Did
Lizzie.
you want to start?
Um, I want to say, not that I know of. My sister Jacqueline and I, we have an uncle who is still with us here in Washington, D.C., and he just had his 82nd birthday, celebrated his 82nd birthday in
Wow.
November. But he's at home. He's at home. He's a widow. He's a widower. His My aunt passed away in 2018, so he lives at home with his son. But yeah, he's not in a facility. But then I have a cousin whose grandmother is in her 90s, and she is in I don't even know if it's called an assisted living facility. I think it's a kind of a step above that, if you will. Um, but she's in her 90s, and so far she seems to be happy there. So I can't say that I personally know anyone who is elderly who is going through struggles, but I'm not surprised. Like, this isn't a story that surprises me or shocks me. I do still find that it's very sad, and I think it's one of the things that no one really considered in the beginning, back in February and March and April, when our government was denying that all of this was happening and denying how bad this could be, we didn't take into account the mental health of people who are confined in these type of facilities, who don't have access to their families, who don't have access to their normal routines, who don't have access to, like Rob said, even basic exercise, like going outside for a walk, or maybe if there were some type of exercise classes on the premises, they can no longer do that. So this doesn't surprise me the least little bit, and it's very, very sad. And in addition to that, I would argue that aside from the elderly, it also probably is taking a tremendous toll on people who were already suffering from some type of mental illness, and they're no longer able to get access to possibly their doctor
Mm-hmm.
or whatever routine or vice they had
Yep.
to help them through that illness. So it's a very real phenomena that is happening. But we don't, Rob, we're not hearing a lot about it so far yet here in the States. At least I haven't.
Not much. Johnny Storm, your thoughts?
Um, I think that I don't know anybody specifically. My besides my grandmother, but she lives with a lot of my family, so I know that um, she isn't personally dealing with. I know a lot of what a lot of elderly people are dealing with in assisted living and nursing homes and things like that. I've actually worked at a nursing home before. Um, it is quite sad. It's actually quite sad. But I think that I'm actually surprised that we're only hearing about one story. I know that it's
I'm
kind of
surprised
a,
at that as well. I agree with you.
yeah. I feel like maybe unfortunately, maybe we will hear more stories similar to this. And it's really unfortunate. It's really weird though that it's only like we're hearing this one story about it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And not in the States. Again, this is a story about a Canadian woman. Like in the States, it's been,
right.
we haven't heard a thing
Uh,
about this aspect
I'm
of
really
COVID.
surprised that we haven't heard more about the suicides and the suicide rate,
Yeah.
that they're not really reporting on it. I mean, as far as me, I think, this is definitely sad. And I have a older um, mother-in-law who was living up in New York for a while. She actually just recently moved down. Um, because she was going through this COVID, and when COVID hit, she was up there pretty much by herself, and there was nobody to help her. We ended up going up to get her and bring her down to stay with us when initially hit, because we had no idea what was going on with COVID. All we knew is this pandemic was hitting. We didn't know if we knew that New York had was shutting down, and we're like, we've got to go get my mother-in-law. She stayed with us for a few months, um, and then ultimately things started to calm down, and we got an idea of what COVID was, how to avoid it and things like that. But um, I get it too. When you get a certain age, in some ways, all you live for is like love and family interaction, and being with loved ones, and you know but even the young people are struggling. That's why I was saying I'm surprised we haven't heard about it. We're
Yeah.
a social species at heart. Certainly, some of us are antisocial. I might be on that spectrum a little bit, but some of those people are in heaven right now. But most people are social creatures, right? So, like you know, so recently we actually had a socially distanced. We had a socially distanced outdoor Thanksgiving with our family, right? And it was amazing to see all the family and friends, and we were lucky to have that because the weather was great. Um, but it hurt me to my heart to turn down hugs from my nieces and nephews. I had to turn them away, and then look on their face. I just wanted to just say F it, pick them up, and just give them a big hug, but I knew I couldn't, right? I mean, not only would their parents be pissed at me, but it's COVID, so but I can't imagine the devastating effects just on those kids. Their faces when I said no, I can't give you a hug, and they're just so sad. And I mean, it hurt. It hurt. It hurt. So
Just to
I get it.
piggyback off of that quickly, so my New York family, I lived in New York for 21 years, and two of my dearest friends in New York, their mother just had her 80th birthday over right before Thanksgiving, and so they had a very small group of people in their brownstone to celebrate. Everyone had a mask. You could see, like, when they posted pictures on Facebook, you could see like the socially distanced points in the living room, which was a complete and stark contrast from 5 years ago, because I was still living in New York 5 years ago when she celebrated her 75th birthday. Hey, you Jeannie Birdsong. And so that was a grand affair, and there were tons of people. She had surprise guests come in. And so to see the muted version of that, and to know that I'm stuck here in my house and I couldn't even be there for 80, it really made me sad. So I agree with you, Neo. Like, it's kind of like a sobering experience, even though we aren't, those people.
Right.
Not being able to connect to those people like we normally would, especially for these milestone occasions or just for the holidays, makes it very difficult, and it puts a lot of things in perspective. Getting to some of the comments, I think Jeanette Brown brought up a very good point. She talked about tech support for the elderly,
Mhm.
and how that might have been something that was, or is something that is overlooked as well. So she wrote, they also need tech support. My stepmother doesn't have an iPhone, can't figure out Skype, and is overwhelmed by email. It is challenging to be in touch with her. And I would have to imagine that the elderly population in this country and in Canada and elsewhere, who are already kind of struggling, trying to make the transition to all of this technology around them, and now to be cut off of that just makes it even worse.
Yep.
That just makes it even worse.
Robbie, do you have any comments before we shut down?
Really, it's the crux of it for me is that this woman was able to provide a legal, legitimate basis for a medically assisted suicide. This wasn't just someone who took their life of their own volition. She was able to go through the motions, to go through all the proper procedures to get a medically assisted suicide. So the mental health aspect is very real, and we really owe it to ourselves and to our loved ones. Even if you don't care about someone, care enough to, if you have an exchange with them, that it's a real human interaction.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, to get some of his comments online, Gianni and I are going to tag team on this. But Mike Winter made a really great point, because my wife actually suffers from this. So combine this with seasonal affect disorder and lack of sunlight. So, I mean, it just, with these shutdowns, it could just go. What are you saying, Lizzie? I saw you putting your hands up.
Notice Rob and I are the same complexion right about now, right?
It's probably normal. It's probably normal. I'm sure it's not lighting or anything. It's probably normal.
I think so.
Did you see some comments, Yanni?
Yeah, Kevin Thaxton said that it's sad that the only people that can help them with technology are the ones that may carry a virus that could kill them.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
No, I like that idea. It would be interesting if, I guess, the companies, corporate backing, like Skype stations, if you will, WebEx stations, Zoom rooms, just to set up an independent station where in facilities, or even if it's a mobile facilities for the day, and you can connect with your loved ones. I think that would be a wonderful corporate initiative at this time.
I agree.
Jose says at Rob B. And not hugging our granddaughter, our niece is walking away with tears in your eyes, hearts torn. We feel you, Neo.
Yeah.
It's so, I mean, I struggled with that. I mean, and their faces is all I really remember. I mean, it already hurt me because I love hugs. I mean, again, I might be somewhat antisocial, but I love hugs, especially people I care about. And, it's tough. It's really tough. Yeah, I can imagine Grandpa Pa with that little cutie.
There have been those moments. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.